We'll kick the show off now. So welcome
So,
to the show.
so let's dive right into this, Jared. Uh, the topic of the day, topic number one. What do you want to go for?
I want to go for the gun laws.
Gun laws. Let's do it.
Yeah, I want to go for Biden's gun laws.
He's going to
So
make us safe. He's going to keep us safe. He's going
yeah.
to save the world. He is our president,
So let me
Joe Biden.
scroll down. Okay. Da, da, da. He says I don't need to wait another minute, let alone an hour, to take common sense steps that will save lives in the future, and to urge my colleagues in the House and Senate to act. So what he wants to do is I'm trying to find the list of the actions he wants to take, but he wants as far as I understand, and before I find it, he wants to have a federal registry. He wants to close the gun show loophole, which is a myth. A private sale, you don't have to have a background check in the state of Utah, but for any let's call it public sale, you have to have a background check. So he wants to, push those through, and he's trying to urge the Senate and the House to pass these bills. I don't know.
And the ghost guns, the 3D printed
Yeah.
guns. He wants to
You can't touch
somehow
them.
register those.
The cat's out of the bag. How are you gonna register that? I mean, you got the Liberator, which commonly self-destruct. I they've got better ones out now of the Liberator model, of more advanced and better 3D printing technology. So now you can get 10 shots off with it.
And in fact, they tried to ban the use of the blueprints and the schematics to
They-
the ghost guns, but
they act-
however,
They actually did for a while.
however, the schematics are now available on the blockchain.
Well, it's not just that, but they did make it illegal, but the Supreme Court reversed that.
And even if
And
they
that was
did
the
make it
Supreme
illegal,
Court under Obama.
if you make something illegal and they still put it on the blockchain, it's immutable. So
Yeah.
at that point, the idea of making information illegal that's put on the blockchain is almost kind of laughable.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, that is true. But we definitely want to hear everyone else's comments on what they think about it. We don't have a lot of people joining us in just yet, but we'll just keep rolling along. But I don't know. He's got there's a couple Republicans that are going for it.
You mean Republicans are siding with Joe?
A couple. I think there's one from Colorado. I forget his name. And is that your phone going off? When it's close to the mic, it gives some transfer. There's a couple of Republicans that are going for it, but you've got a couple of Democrats that are pro 2A, and especially after this last year with all the gun sales, that'd be a buyback. That'd be pretty horrendous if he goes for it. He wants to go after the AR-15, of course. The evilest tool on the planet.
Oh, just another reason to buy an AK.
Yeah. But so he wants to go after 30, high capacity magazines. Wants to go after semi-automatic capabilities. Anything that has that's colored black. Anything else. I do want to get Maj Touré on the show to talk about what he's been doing.
Now, does Joe Biden want to also force gun safety classes on high schoolers?
Well, if there's no guns, why would you have gun safety?
Oh,
Then we'd have to have knife safety.
right, which might not be a bad idea.
I don't know. That's what he wants to, he wants to go after that. And also tonight, we wanted to talk about the Chauvin trial that's currently going on. Now, granted, neither of us really know a lot about what's been going on the trial.
I do know.
because-
I do know a few facts, Jared.
Well, okay, let's have at it.
Okay. Well, A, he had COVID. B, there were counterfeit bills involved. And C, the police did not want to get COVID. And D, putting the knee on the neck was a tactic that they've used in multiple scenarios that they were taught in the police training.
Yeah, in their academy.
So it wasn't something that the guy just made up. It was a technique that was taught to him and a tool in his arsenal to be used at that moment.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I know George Floyd had a bit of a history as a criminal too. So he was a sick guy. He was on drugs. And he's made a martyr now. And this, I don't know, I feel sympathy for this police officer because A, he had to do that job. B, he is in the scenario where he is. And C, he was just following the protocols that he was told to do. But, of course, does the black community blame the leadership, the politicians that make the rules, and does the black community ever come out against the Federal Reserve or anything that has to do with the stemming of our fiscal policies? No, they don't. They just like to, I don't know, cry, it seems to me, about the immediate symptoms of their problems. But when you actually try to address the core problems, it's like they just fall asleep when you try to explain it to them.
Well, that's because, well, they've been instructed in a narrative. Let's look who they have as leadership. Sharpton and Jackson, those guys are charlatans. They make their living going around and getting the races to boil up against each other so that they can turn a profit off of either convicting one side or retraining another side or anything else. So it's really quite sad because there's other leaders. Now I'm going to go into a real quick my issue with how they dealt with George Floyd, if I just look at the mechanics of it, is the kneeling on the neck was trained, but there was also an officer restraining his legs and an officer laying on his core, which those three combined, as a safety officer, you would know would cause mechanical breathing issues. Also, the timeline of it is a little extreme. I know that when they went to put him in the car, he was, I can't breathe. Don't put me in here. I can't breathe. They should have continued to put him in the car. They should have. He requested to be on the ground, but I would have. Well, I don't know what I would have done. Well, let's face it, I wouldn't have been in that situation because I wouldn't have been law enforcement.
But you were at one point.
I was at one point, but then I changed. But now me, that's a different Jared. They are put in a tough situation, and this is a political trial. Regardless of how you feel about it, everything surrounding it is very hyped up politically. And I fear that, well, they've already had jurors threatened by Antifa and other members of the community, and the jurors are scared, which is they're televising this trial. Slide your phone over just a little bit. Let's see if we can't. And they're televising this trial, I believe, to keep as many people as they can out of the visual of the jury. So they're controlling the environment a lot.
Well, what is the environment? Where is the jury housed? Where are the trials taking place?
I'm sure the jury's housed at a hotel. The trials at their courthouse. Their courthouse looks like it's armed up for the zombie apocalypse right now. Concertina wire and guards all around it, and they've controlled it. The excuse they're giving for the full televised part is because of COVID. They can't let a lot of people in there, but I think a lot of it has to do with they can better control access to the jury that way, and also televised. It can send a message across the whole nation. Now, do I believe that? Now, all that being said, the officers, where they all knelt on him, if he was that hard to hold down, where it took 4 guys to hold him down, they should have sought other means of restraint.
Like what?
Well, you hog tie him and lay him down in the back of the car.
And can that be done in 8 minutes? How long was he on his neck, kneeling like that?
7.5 minutes to 9 minutes, something like that.
Have you ever tried to hog tie a struggling
Yes.
person? How long does it take?
Oh, it's real quick and easy. You got handcuffs. You know.
When they're that big?
Yeah. Now, have I ever done it in real life? No, I've just done it in training, but they were wrestling against us. And maybe the hog tying's the wrong answer. Maybe it would have still went down, but you wouldn't have been applying mechanical force on him.
Well, I mean, you got to look at it from a safety point of view. The police officer wants to stay safe, okay? You got to always consider that when you're dealing with these types of encounters, the victim is going to try to spit on you. The victim is going to try to bite you. The victim is going to try to breathe on you and pass on whatever COVID-related material is in his system. Now, even though I'm saying it as a fact of 100%, and maybe that he wouldn't have, as the police officer, you have to assume 100% that the victim is going to try to do that to you. So you're going to want to make sure his face is facing away from you. So in that regards, because we're in a pandemic, I'm not going to, as a police officer, I'm not going to let people even have the opportunity to look at me when I have them on the ground, because they could throw a little spittle at me, right? So best to keep their face pointed in another direction for your own safety. And I'm a selfish person.
Well, that maneuver they were in was the lead off to the hog tie.
So maybe they were going to get there.
No, they were just holding them down, which is a trained maneuver. But what the hog tie allows you to do is it allows you to restrain their feet and their hands. So their hands are cuffed behind their back, and then you apply restraints to their ankles, and those restraints hook up to their wrists.
But did they not want him to go into the car and say, were they like, hey, calm down, calm down? I mean, did they just go straight after him? I didn't see them go straight after him. They wanted him to calm down, and the dude was freaking out. Maybe they're thinking, well, we just hold him down a little bit, and he'll calm down.
Oh, I'm sure. I don't think that any of them intended for him to die.
No, I guarantee you they didn't.
The reason the hog tie is used is so that you're not applying mechanical force to hold him down. Because if you restrain someone's breathing apparatus, the diaphragm, the chest cavity, that's where I don't think the neck was the real hazard. The neck is the hazard for blood flow to the brain, or actually it's blood flow from the brain on the back of the neck.
Okay.
But it's holding the trunk down is the issue.
You know, it's the issue was all the drugs that were in his system.
I agree.
In combination to the police techniques of restraint.
I agree completely.
So
I agree. But would it not have been better had he went into his medical issues without the police officers being on top of it?
it would have been better for him not to do drugs, get a day job, and stay out of trouble.
You're arguing semantics.
It's just reality, Jared. It's there he was in a really stupid situation to be in.
I agree.
And what happens when you do stupid things? You win stupid prizes.
I agree.
And not only that, but everyone knows that police officers don't fuck around. And if you don't know that, I hope you don't ever have to find out, because their main thing is, I want to get through the day. I want to go home. I want to see my family, and I want to stay healthy, and I want to retire after 20 years. That's the name of the game. Okay. Look, no matter how you feel, no matter what you think or what you believe, these police officers don't want to get yelled at by their superiors, don't want to get written up. They want to follow orders. They don't care about written law. They want to follow the orders that keep them employed, and they want to achieve the 20 years and retire healthy. And you want to know what? If you got to kneel on somebody's neck to do that, it's kind of like when we're in a combat zone and, hey, look, it's better to let loose the artillery on a village than have to go in foot to foot, street to street. That's the cold-hearted reality of government. And welcome this.
Well, it's not working out that way, is it?
Well, if some people get to 20 years and stay healthy.
Well, it's not working out for Chauvin. That's why I'm just saying that I don't know. I don't know exactly what their training was. I don't know if their training had a time limit when you're kneeling. And when they're in that moment, I imagine that felt like an eternity for every one of those officers, where you got the crowd gathering around you. You're restraining this, you're restraining George Floyd in the manner you are. I imagine it was a lifetime for them, a lifetime for everyone watching. But I would, and I can say this, I know I'm looking at this hindsight from, Monday morning quarterback, but I would hope that were I in that situation, I would have sought out a different means of restraint. A means of restraint where I'm even further away from catching COVID from this guy.
You know what, Jared? I bet you if you were there, you'd be just like, I don't want to catch COVID from this guy, but my job is to bring him down to the station and find out where he got those counterfeit 20s.
That's what the hog tying is for.
And I'm sure they would have gotten to the hog tie unless he calmed down. Maybe they wanted to give the guy a chance to calm down. Sometimes you don't just want to go straight for the jugular. You want to actually give people a chance to just come to rationale. And sometimes they don't come to rationale. And maybe they should have hog-tied him faster. Maybe they should have just went straight for the restraint and physically secured the guy. But at first, it kind of looks like maybe they could reason.
And I'm not trying to lay blame on the officers. I'd rather let the courts figure all that out. George Floyd was not a hero. And I see all these pictures of him painted. Imagine if civilization ended tomorrow and then a new civilization formed. They would think that he was the Messiah.
It's true.
They painted his face everywhere like he was a hero. Now, let's lay out the facts. George Floyd was not a good and decent man.
George Floyd should have been dead a long time ago for the things that he's done. I don't think there would have been any mercy for any of us doing anything like that while we were in uniform. They would have just... The fact that he even pointed a gun at a pregnant woman during a home invasion warrants execution from my perspective. That is a clear violation of the non-aggression principle. How do you redeem yourself from that? How do you redeem yourself from pointing a gun at a pregnant woman, invading her home? I just don't see that happening.
I don't know.
And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, George Floyd was convicted of
he spent 5 years in jail. Here's how the story went. He was the lead man on a home burglary. He dressed up in a blue uniform so that the lady at home would think that he was a government worker. Went to the door, knocked on the door. She opened the door right when she went to close it. Now, she was pregnant and visibly pregnant, 6, 7 months pregnant. I think it was 7 or 8 months. And he rammed the door open, held it open so that 3 more of his buddies could come in. She didn't have any money. This is when he was in, Harris County, Texas. She didn't have any money, so they stole all her jewelries and electronics and her phone and such. But while he was shaking her down, he pointed the gun at her belly and said, "You want me to kill your baby?" Now, granted, he may have, come to Jesus after that, all except for the drug use and the I don't know. I don't know if he counterfeited. We didn't have a chance to adjudicate him on that.
But he did have possession of counterfeit bills.
He had possession of a counterfeit bill.
And from the government's point of view, that's worse than pointing a gun at a pregnant woman.
Well, the government thinks so.
How dare you violate the most sacred artifact that government produces?
But so that is a tough call. What I'm worried about here, let's go into the trial now. What I'm worried about is that we're going to have a completely political trial where there's not going to be an honest trial. They're going to go through the motions, and he's going to be found guilty. And he may be guilty, honestly, but I'm afraid he's going to be found guilty, not honestly, to appease the community. And I think either way, regardless, there's going to be riots. I mean, we're coming into summertime. The COVID lockdowns have caused a lot of tension. The media has caused even more.
Where do you think there's going to be riots, Jared?
Any major city. Maybe even Salt Lake.
Yeah, no, I doubt it. There will be riots in black communities and cities that have large black populations, and that will further degrade the position of black Americans.
Didn't I just say any major city?
Well, come on now. You can't make generalizations like that.
Well, didn't they have them up in, what was that town outside of Buffalo? White suburban area next to the inner city where those guys were beating that store owner and his wife with the 2x4s.
Yeah.
They drifted into the white community. There is no geographical location that holds them still. It's not like there's
but that's New York.
A wall or a fence.
All's fair, love, and war in New York when it comes to that
upstate
stuff.
New York. Or what about Washington? What about those guys that hopped on the bus in Portland, Oregon? And these were white guys, Antifa, and they started heading east into Idaho, and Idaho run them off. What about what's that town? Fort up in northern Colorado. All right. Okay. But yeah, so what about, I mean, will we get riots out here? Probably not.
No, I can guarantee you there won't be riots out here.
There's a calculation to when things can riot, and it's percentages of populations. And it's not, and I don't think it's necessarily a black or white thing, because I mean, Antifa has been just as bad, if not worse, and in larger numbers than the Black Lives Matter riots have been.
Yeah, Antifa is well funded. I don't think during the Biden administration that these people are going to find funding to trash the cities and make the Biden administration look bad. I just don't think so. I don't know why I think that. I don't know. Kind of a hunch.
Antifa already raided the federal courthouse since Biden got in.
Yeah,
up in Portland, said we are ungovernable.
Well, that's Portland, though. There's such a huge concentration of them there still, probably.
I don't think it mattered. They're communists. Communists don't like the Democrats either. They like them more than Republicans, but they don't like them either.
Well, I suppose they could get money from like China and Russia to do that kind of crap. But you know, I'm throwing out my intuition. I really don't think the riots will be as bad as everyone's talking about. And believe me, they are talking. I'm looking at some of these Facebook groups talking about how they're gonna riot, how they're gonna get revenge if they don't get the verdict they want. But again, like I said, these will be in black communities, degrading black facilities and standards of living. It just won't be productive. Now, I can guarantee you they won't be rioting at the Federal Reserve where they do print honest $20 bills. I can guarantee you they won't be rioting at the political offices of their representatives that make the rules that require police officers to choke out black people selling cigarettes on the corner of New York City. I can guarantee you that.
I think that one was a dropped ball by the government. Now that was under Obama, and not that Obama had anything to do with it, but that was, gosh dang, that was like 7 years ago now, 8 years. That one they should have tried because he had no defense had they taken him into court. He used a maneuver that was banned by NYPD. The rear naked choke is essentially what he did. And had they taken that to court, he would have had no defense.
So they have no defense nowadays because New York just removed immunity from the police officers.
Yeah. But he would have had no defense then. Where Chauvin has some defense. They can pull out the police manual, the police training videos that show exactly what he did. But those New York police officers, they dropped the ball on that. They dropped the ball on the Philandro Castillo case, which is that young African-American guy who had a concealed carry permit, had a concealed weapon. The police officer comes up and he said, officer, I got to let you know I've got a concealed carry on me. I've got the permit. Oh, let me see your permit. He reaches back to pull his wallet. The police officer spurgs out and shoots him. And they should have, I don't know what you could try. I mean, the officer, hopefully he doesn't have a job. Hopefully they run him off. Maybe he could run one of them change catching booths on the freeway out there back east or whatever. I think that was in Philadelphia. But yeah, that was, they should have gone after that one. They should have gone after the one in New York. But
now as a police officer, I want to know, what advantage is it to me, or should I say a former law enforcement agent, what advantage is it to me to tell the police officer that I have a gun on me or a concealed carry, or why should I declare these things?
Because it's a law.
I just get shot.
He did it because it's the law.
So we have to legally declare.
You're supposed to declare
our defense
if you're carrying.
I did not. Okay. Whoops.
And that's why. And that's so that I think that's honestly to protect you, because what if the police officer feels for some reason he needs you to pull you from the vehicle and he goes to do a pat down, there's a sidearm on you, that just sends him from, grade 3 all the way to grade 10 all at once. Whereas if you tell him, hey, look, I've got a firearm on me, I've got a concealed carry permit, then, he can go from grade 3 to grade 4 or grade 5, but not all the way up. Not, the spectrum for him doesn't go from one extreme to the other and throw him out of equilibrium.
From my perspective, it just seems like police officers might go from one grade to the next higher if you do tell them that you're carrying.
Yeah, they'll go from one to the next higher, but not from, a 3 to a 9 or 10. If they're doing a pat down and find a weapon on you,
mm-hmm.
You want to declare that. I mean, the police, But whenever they go to handcuff you or go to search you, they ask you ahead of time, do you have any weapons on you, any sharps, anything, anything I need to know about? I want to be able to, I don't want to feel that surprise when I'm patting you down.
Yeah. I guess it's kind of just one of those risk matrix things like, all right, do I really want to elevate them to that level and get them all concerned?
Yeah.
Or
But
do I,
anyway, so with the trial, I've listened to a little bit of it. The hard part with expert witnesses is most of the time they're paid for. So I think that's become kind of a racket.
So what do you think is going to happen? What's your prediction?
Well, they're trying to get him for murder too. That means he's murdered. If I remember, I'm shooting off the hip here. He murdered someone with kind of malice, and it was directed murder. It wasn't pre-planned, but it was directed. They wanted to go for murder 1 first, but that would have been shot out of the water. They're going for murder 3 and unintentional homicide.
Okay, and do you think they'll get it?
Unintentional homicide, yes. Murder 2, I don't know. Murder 3, that's the real questionable one.
And you know what? If you're out there in the black community as a black person and you're like, man, I hope this person hangs. Now, do you really honestly think that this person woke up that day and said, I want to murder George Floyd? Now, that's like, it's like when we are
imagine.
It's like when we're deployed overseas and we have to maybe push a button or pull a trigger.
Imagine the string of luck that he'd had to go through if they tried going for pre-planned murder. He woke up in the morning while he's brushing his teeth, thinking he wants to kill George Floyd. Goes throughout his day thinking he wants to kill George Floyd. 2 officers respond to a counterfeit money call. They pull him out of his car, not for the counterfeit money. They pull him out because they thought he was intoxicated, which was why they pulled him out of the car. And he happens to catch a backup call. So if he was intentionally planning, that was the craziest string of dumb luck to bring his intentions to fore. Not just that, but George Floyd would have had to have been acting intoxicated for the other 2 officers to pull him out of the car to give Chauvin the opportunity. Floyd would have had to have been nervous about being put into the car to be requested to be put on the ground, which he was put on the ground prior to Chauvin arriving. Chauvin arrived as backup. That's a crazy string. He missed his golden, if that's the case, he missed his golden opportunity to buy a lottery ticket because that was his lucky day.
Well,
so I don't think it was intentional homicide. I don't think any of the officers wanted any harm to come to him. I think they wanted to process him, get on with their day, go home, eat the pork chop and the mashed potatoes before they watched the game, had a beer, and went to bed. That's honestly what I believe was on everyone's mind.
Yeah. So sometimes bad things happen.
Do I believe the fentanyl has a major part to play? Yes. Do I believe that he had a coronary disease, I believe, or a heart disease, congestive heart or something, had a part to play? Yes. Do I also believe that now's the time to, across the nation, retrain your officers to have them carry leg shackles in their car? Every arrest, hog tie, get your hands off them. Because that way, if they die, you're not touching them at the time.
Well, maybe if you sick a dog on everybody, at least you won't kill them.
Boy, dogs control the situation, I'll tell you.
Right? You get injured by the dog, but you don't die. No, I don't know. I don't think that's. I think this is just was one of those snake eyes moments where you
It is.
where you
Well,
rolled some bad luck.
let's face it. There's also the nation had been on lockdown. Everyone was hyped up. I think that the tempo and the mood of the nation, there would have been riots for something.
So if there's riots, it's not because Joe Biden's going to take all our guns through executive action. It's because this one cop.
Well, my gun sank in the river the other day. Remember the Rod and Gun Club I went to? Took them all with me. I couldn't get to them fast enough. I tried. I don't know why I took them all on the boat. Every one of them.
I heard Uncle Joe can swim.
Sad. Well, he can go get them all. Show them where they're at. But yeah, I don't know. But I don't know. Let's filter through the comments real quick. See what people say.
That's a pleasant comment.
Yeah. Betsy says perfect storm created the outcome. You're right. It did. It was a horrendous situation. Maybe I can Monday morning quarterback these officers all I want, but they're going to revert to their training every time. Just like when we talked to Kale in here and he asked about stuff, I said the officers are going to do what they're trained to do. That's they're going to fall back on their training.
It's very robotic. It really is.
They're in an excited situation. They're getting tunnel vision. They're going through combat fatigue. They're going to cycle back to their training. And if that's what they were trained, if that's trained primarily how you manage a wrestling suspect that you cannot physically maintain control of, that's what they're going to revert to. And I would like to see training updated. I don't want to see police officers in this situation. I don't want to see suspects dying. There is a damn good chance that George Floyd would have died regardless of those police officers' actions. He took a dose of fentanyl that was 4 times the amount to kill a normal person. Could he have survived it? Sure. If he's a common everyday user of fentanyl and has built up an ability to withstand that, sure he could have. But just reading it, fentanyl's a big killer.
And there's really only one scenario that I've ever been taught as when I was in an augmentee security position where we're allowed to just start killing all the bad people and if they have hostages. And that's if they're kidnapping chemical, biological, or nuclear weaponry. So in that scenario, the police are allowed to kill everybody, believe it or not. But this is not one of those scenarios. This is a moment where that cop did not intend to kill George Floyd. And if this becomes the triggering mechanism that you've been waiting for as a black American to go out and riot on the streets and get revenge, you're pathetic. Just saying.
Well, I agree that rioting, again, I think that reverts. We could go deeper into the issues in the. I don't just want to say urban community, but in the black urban community, we can go into those issues. You've got the '94 crime bill, which our lovely president was the one who pushed through. That made it so that drugs that are in common use by African Americans carry stronger sentences. That made it so that in areas, in crimes that relate to black Americans, they have stronger sentences, which is, and it's a disparaging truth, that it was also pushed by the Black National Caucus. That you had Biden, you had Clinton, and you had the Black National Caucus. They wanted to try to control their inner cities through the legal system, and it's come home to roost. And so it's time to eliminate that. Just like with hate crimes. I don't like a hate crime nomenclature on regular crimes. I don't like the add-on.
Crime's a crime.
If someone murders someone, do I care if he smiled or frowned while he did it? He murdered someone. A crime's a crime. Now, if the initial crime doesn't carry a sentence harsh enough, let's address that. But I don't think we need to worry about adding on hate crime nomenclatures to a violent act.
Yeah. Violence is violence. It really
I don't
is.
like muddying legal waters. I like legal waters that are easy to approach. Anyway, so Carl says, one less criminal druggie on the street. POS got what he had coming. And that may be true.
And you know what? I want to say this to Carl. I don't think because someone does drugs, they should be assaulted or violated or abused. I really don't. I think that's a choice that you make as an individual that will have its own consequences. And in that regards, you know, George Floyd has my sympathy for being a drug user, and you know, that part of my humanitarian can come out. But in terms of crucifying this police officer just because the black community wants a reason to get revenge on the system, I mean, can't you find another excuse? If you go out and riot, can it be because we're overtaxed? And I don't know.
Oh, I agree with that. I think another big question is, me and Dave pondered this in the beginning, but if finding him guilty, even if it's fraudulent, I'm not saying he is or not, but if finding him guilty would cure race relations, would that be a valuable sacrificial lamb?
My answer was no, of course not.
And I agree with Dave. I agree. It's better to let 1,000 guilty people walk than to jail one innocent person. But that's just my thoughts. That's my personal beliefs.
And there was an African country that recently, the leader of that country said, "Hey, look, we don't feel like America is treating you properly in addressing the black community." And he said, "Come to us. We'll give you citizenship and allow you to be in our country." And I thought to myself, like, you know what? If I really, really honestly felt that I'm not treated or respected, or if I have a fair chance where I am, and somebody offered that to me, and those people are of my kin, I would take him up on that.
Well, you know what happened in Liberia and Monrovia, don't you?
When? What timeline?
Well, during Monroe, during President Monroe, we built a country in West Africa called Liberia.
Yep.
And we sent a whole bunch of former slaves over and kind of allowed them to populate it. And the sad thing is, the first thing they did was enslave the local Liberians, the indigenous people.
Actually, you know, I've been trying to study some of these African tribes and stuff, but they cannibalize each other. Like one tribe versus the other, Tutsis and Hoodies and Hutus and well, there's even other little tribes that just gone extinct because of the tribal warfare.
That's an old school war, and that one was also, that war was egged on by the local Arab nationals.
Yeah,
that was Rwanda was a complicated war, but Liberia, I mean, and the civil war that just ended, I don't know what, 10 years ago in Liberia, that went on forever with the best general on earth, General Butt Naked. He was a war criminal, 8 babies.
He found God, though.
He found God, but they that's the first thing they did when they got over there is and there is not a society on earth or not a civilization on earth who hasn't been slaves or enslaved. Not one, except for maybe the Slavs, hence their name. But then again, I imagine if we go back far enough, it's probably happened.
Yeah, I'm watching that Viking series right now.
Yeah, Vikings did
Oh
a
my
lot of
God.
slaving. So did the Brits. The Brits enslaved other Brits when they were in Civil War. The French did. Everyone, when they went to war, the losers, the nobility got sold back, and the peasants just became slaves.
And think about it like this.
Wars are expensive.
I remember one time I'm sitting in a theater, and Mr. Prager was giving a speech at this college, and he said one time, he's like out to the public, he gave this challenge. He's like, there can be nothing good about slavery, and if anyone believes otherwise, I dare you to challenge. And I wanted to raise my hand because I didn't, but let's pretend I did, and this is what I would have said. I would have said, you know what? If it weren't for slavery, the captives, the only other alternative that they would have had would have been to be executed. So because someone eventually thought of slavery, people got to live longer, and maybe they got to pass on their genetics. Maybe, because some people were turned into eunuchs, but some capacity to survive as a race and pass on genetics, is instead of the tribal warfare executions because of slavery. So slavery saved lives back then because instead of being killed, you were a slave. And I didn't say it, but that's what I wanted to say. And so, I mean, that's just human nature. It's animal nature. We've evolved socially to know and understand that slavery is wrong now, but now it's wrong to say, let that history go and make do with what we have in the present. It's wrong to say this. Apparently the black community thinks that
I don't like
this
to
is
generalize
wrong to
because
say.
not all of them.
Not all of them, but
Yeah.
if you look at Facebook and all the little videos out there right now, they're talking about these racial injustices.
I think it's who they've chosen to be their leaders.
Well,
Or not who they've chosen,
then rebel because that is
Who
going to
is
get
their
you
leaders?
into a toxic environment
They've
in
got-
the future.
they've got better leaders out there, better leaders that are preaching. And for some sorry ass reason, all those leaders are libertarian. So those leaders don't really offer a lot, and the media doesn't cover them. The media doesn't push them, but they've got better leaders out there, and they need to seek them out. Seek out leaders that enable you to live free. But anyways, let's keep going through the comments.
Next. Yep.
We got wandering down a path. Sorry about that, guys.
Here's one from Betsy.
Riots are coordinated events these days. They will go wherever they can get the most coverage. Yeah, damn right. They truly are. Laura says, I still can't believe Joe Biden is our president. The USA has gone to shit. You could argue the USA has been shit for a minute, but yeah, Joe Biden was the palatable pill for people who did not like Donald Trump. I don't think anyone voted for Joe Biden. I think they voted for Donald Trump or against Donald Trump. I love that we honor George Floyd just because he was black. He was also a terrible person. Who gives a shit what color he was? Yeah, and that is a tough question. That is a tough one. He was not...
Yeah, I 100% agree. I don't care what color you are. You point a gun at a pregnant woman.
Yeah, well, just breaking into people's homes and tormenting them, doing all that. I mean, that is extreme maneuvers. That is extreme. That is willingness to take someone's life for their things. I believe they will convict of murder 3 simply to make an example of him. Yeah, I do think that murder 3, I think that the unintentional homicide is definitely going to happen. I think the murder 3 will happen on the political side. The murder 2 is the one that's really questionable. I'd have to read up on it again, but it's. Yeah. Carl says, wait, Jared, you have a tap in your stream room now? Yes, come on by. I'm going to have 4 taps in here soon, but only 2 will be flushed.
And this beer is really good. It's a jalapeno beer. It's lovely.
Yeah, it's a jalapeno cream ale.
Here's a good one.
All right.
Mike says, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Yeah, that's what I always say. Too many factors go in to this situation that it's a stalemate. Nothing but a bunch of what it's that it makes it easier for politics to swing it in any way they want. Yes, this is going to be a political situation. True. It's all a game of political
Not
chess.
what ifs. Yeah, that is true. That is true. You know what? The judge and the jury that morning might step out on a patio and lick their finger and do the old golf finger. Maybe drop some grass, see which way the winds are blowing. You know, it is tough. Carl says, I don't either, but the baby thing is when I typed that.
Yeah,
Huh?
the baby thing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree.
That just burns a hole in your gut.
I agree. Now, granted, he may have been a changed man. He may have been. Maybe the fentanyl he didn't know, and whatever. You could go down any path. Do I think that he deserved to die for the circumstances that day? Of course not. Do I think that the police officers were also put into an untenable position or found themselves in an untenable position?
I'd like to know more about the history of this police officer. Like, I bet he does community service, goes to church.
Actually, he's had a couple of complaints against him. But
well,
I imagine
he's a police officer.
Every police officer does.
I mean, who doesn't complain about the police officers arrested?
Now, Victoria says, what if it wasn't slavery? It was just a job. Didn't these slaves get paid in some way in trade for their work? I'm pretty sure I'm a slave to my work. Okay. Chattel slavery as a practice in the United States is a very complicated affair to talk to. The first slave owner in the United States, I think his name was Ronald Johnson, was a black man. He had, I think, 6 Irish slaves and 4 black slaves. Now, 2 of his Irish slaves came over as indentured servants. He took the indentured servant. He took the indentured servant to court and got awarded permanent slave master. Got awarded a white person, an Irish person. They weren't white back then. An Irish person. He got awarded by the courts. Now this is the old courts when it was still English property. He was in Louisiana.
Now, you're saying this was the first
legal slave owner in the United States. It was like 1722 or some shit like that.
Was a black man.
Was a black man. And the first chattel slave was a white man.
I have a hard time believing it, but we'll have to talk about that one later, but it's hard to believe. Like, why were black people over here before the slave trade?
Oh, come on. People are everywhere. Anthony Johnson.
The first legal slave owner in American history was a black tobacco farmer. No shit. Wow. Okay. I have been schooled by Google because everything Google says.
No, you got schooled by Jared.
Who got schooled by Google, right?
No, actually, I got schooled on this a long, long time ago. Actually, it was a black NCO of mine that taught me this when I was in the Army. But anyways, Anthony Johnson, look him up. It's an interesting story. So, chattel slavery. There are some recordings, maybe not recording, but someone biographied ex-slaves after they got emancipated. And it was not an even split, but there were a substantial amount of them that said, I wish I was a slave again because this is a lot more responsibility than I wanted to sign up for. Because they just had to work when the master was looking. Now, were their living situations miserable? Yes. Of course, everyone's living situations were miserable back then.
1700s, I think life sucked.
Well, 1800s life sucked. I mean, in dentistry, if you were lucky, you might get some whiskey before they whittled on you. It just, life sucked back then. But that's not to, I don't like to compare the work I do today to slavery. I have freedom to leave. I can quit my job. So there's a lot of it. Now, chattel slavery was especially egregious because the major part of that is if you're a slave, your child is also a slave. And that was, and you weren't free to marry, weren't free to leave. A lot of, I don't know the exact percentage, but a lot of times your children would be taken away from you and sold, families torn apart, a lot of stuff. So do I believe there could be a genealogical scar on the African American community? Of course I do. Of course. But I also believe that that genealogical scar could be on any community, and not just that one, but genealogical scars can be. And it's the responsibility of a free thinking human being to fight those scars, to climb out of it. And so that's what I hope that they do. Okay. Katie Griffin Howard wants to know what's with this beer, Jared. Well, it's a heady bastard. I'll tell you what. I think I've got my CO2 turned up a little high. I'm going to get that under control later. But it is a jalapeno cream ale. I brewed it myself. I've got a Irish import coffee that'll be ready to go on Saturday. But yeah, I like to brew beer and drink it on the show.
It is a good beer.
Yeah, it's not spicy at all. It just has the scent and the flavor of jalapenos. You just get a little jalapeno chase with the cream ale. And there's some added citra hops. But anyways, I think we're coming to the end of this show. We didn't spend as much time on Biden's gun laws as I wanted to. Again, I don't have to. I lost all of them in the river the other day. But I don't think. Well, let me just free ball on mass shootings real quick.
There's a lot of them lately, or is it just there's a lot of them in the news lately?
It could be. I don't know. I don't know. Okay, let's look at the most common thing that all mass shooters. Yeah, you can come get some Sunday, Carl. The most common thing that almost all of the mass shooters have is a fatherless home. And that leads me to believe that lack of fathers in their children's life neglects those children to learn that half of the parentage. And I believe that's the responsibility part. Fathers are ingrained to teach that. Now there are failure fathers. I can't argue that. Hell, I probably was one. But there are failure fathers. But that is the most common thing. So I think we need to, as a nation, try to figure out how to focus on keeping families together. Keeping mother and father in the house, giving opportunities for families to thrive, not taxing them to death, not regulating them out of success. We've got to, as a nation, figure that out, that we can back off. Yeah, it's a mental. Betsy says mass shootings are a mental health crisis, not a weaponry crisis. Yes, and I believe that's a part of that fatherless home. We've got to figure out how to keep them together, and maybe that's let's not incentivize when a family breaks up, and let's incentivize when a family stays together. What if the food stamp, welfare, government assistance system multiplied if the parents stayed married, if they showed effort? We've got to figure that out. What if we said, you know what? we're going to, if you guys stay married, whatever, we're going to ensure that you make, we're going to give you X amount over until you've reached median income. Median income being what, 50,000 a year or whatever. Probably depends on the state. If you're married, if you're not married, figure something else out that's not equal, but keep them married, keep them together. Let's fortify that.
You know what? The welfare thing. Oh gosh, can it go good either way? I don't. I think if people are receiving like
I would rather see it done through churches.
A bag of oatmeal versus a food stamp, maybe things would, because you're not going to go hungry if you have the bag of oatmeal in your hand. But the food stamp thing gets abused a lot.
Yeah, but I don't think that outlawing weapons or making them so you have to sign up legislation to get them or any of that, I don't think that will cure the issue with mass shootings. I mean, China has mass stabbings. England had a mass stabbing. England had a mass trucking.
They used acid over in England.
New York had a mass trucking. I mean, New York City had a a guy that drove a truck through a populated intersection on purpose. He couldn't get a gun there, but he could rent a truck for cheaper than he would have bought a firearm for.
Yeah.
And he got a bigger kill count than the kid in Georgia got. So, I mean, I don't think if someone sets their mind to do that, so we've got to figure out how to head that off at the pass. And I think having a well-funded home life is the way to do that. That's my opinion. I don't know if anyone agrees. But anyway, so we're going to end the show now. But you guys, keep talking about this. I would like to have had a different opinion in the comments. We had a lot of our same opinion. Yes, Betsy, families are incentivized to be single parent homes. They are, and it's sad. But we would like to have different opinions in there. We want to engage with other people.
We like the pushback.
Well, it's not just that, but we want to, if there's something we're missing, we want to know that. And we also want our audience to have their mind opening. That's how you become a well-rounded person, is you learn a lot. But anyways, Carl, see you Sunday. Everyone else, thanks for joining us. Thanks for the comments. And go to YouTube. Give us a like and a share on there. Send us comments on YouTube. That I guess makes the algorithm recognize us, gets more views there, and then eventually this won't be just two guys ranting in the corner room of a house.
Because we'll be banned if they recognize us.
Eventually we will be. My other channel got something banned, and so they don't like it when you talk about the elite. But anyways, yeah, go to YouTube. And go to the, if you listen to podcasts in podcast form, we're on all that. Go there. Please give us a review and a like, and, subscribe to that as well. And check out my other show, Wild Podcast. And Dave is still tossing around. He's getting ready to start up another show of his own. It doesn't have a name yet.
Not quite yet. I don't know about that responsibility quite just yet.
But I'm going to keep pushing him towards it, even if it's, even if I have to drag him kicking and screaming. I like the idea. I think it would be a winning deal. And his initial idea may not pan out, but I still want the idea to run. Anyways, thanks for joining us. We'll be back next Thursday. I think we've got we're going to have some bill talk and other things like that. If there's something you guys want to hear about, let us know, and we'll see you then.
Thank you.